Evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me on Breakthrough to Success for episode 2 of Caribbean Authors Who Motivate, Educate, and Empower. If you are joining me for the first time, welcome, and I hope you enjoy the content and have some positive takeaway. I'm Amanda Edwin, owner of the Facebook page Breakthrough to Success and host of this Black History Month special series. Through my page, my mission is to empower others to break through those barriers that impede their path to success. And tonight, my guest is a retired teacher and a new children's book series author, Cheryl Charles. Now, Cheryl was born in Trinidad and spent her early years on the island before moving to Canada with her parents. So I'm excited to have her chat with me tonight about her book series and her journey. So let's welcome Cheryl. Hello, Cheryl.
Hello. Hi, good night. How are you?
I am fine, thank you. And I know you have something very special to start off with. So we're going to go ahead and do that.
Okay. Just
Wonderful. So those were the characters, I'm guessing, introducing Messy Marvyn and his friends. Wonderful.
Yes.
So it's such a pleasure to have you here, Cheryl. I know, as you said before, we haven't really met each other in person. After all this time, we know each other. I know your daughter. I know your husband. We worked on committees together, and we have not met you personally. So I'm glad you're here with me tonight, finally. And
Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. When I did read Messy Marvyn and his friends. I do have a copy here. And I liked the message that you had to share in the book, and I guess with the whole series coming forward. What I want you to tell us from the start right now is, what was your inspiration when you came up with Messy Marvyn? Tell us your story with Messy Marvyn.
Well, I don't know if I was inspired. Most kids growing up, or a lot of kids, I loved reading and I loved writing. And one of the activities I loved in school was when our teachers allowed us to make our own little books. And you'd, write stories and draw pictures and get your construction paper cover and staple them, and you'd have your own little book and you'd be an author. So I enjoyed doing that, but I never really thought of being an author. There are two other authors in my family. My mother-in-law, Norma Charles, has been an author for over 40 years. She now writes for the tween market. And my husband, who's a scientist and a professor at UWaterloo, has a textbook. So I've been able to see the process, and it's a lot of hard work. So I don't know if I really planned on being an author. But when Messy Marvyn popped into my imagination, my husband and I were new parents, had a beautiful little girl who you've met, and we were exhausted. We were tired. And one day, a little boy appeared in my imagination, the back of my brain, and he was wearing a little white t-shirt with an M on it. And for whatever reason, I knew his name was Marvyn. And I never questioned why he was there. I was just too exhausted, really, to think about why I had a cartoon character rumbling around in the back of my brain. Over a course of several weeks, Marvyn was joined by other characters. All of a sudden, a little girl appeared, her name Chatty Patty. The characters would come to me And then names would come with the characters. Then Hungry Hannah appeared. Eventually, Picky Paul appeared. And again, I didn't really pay much attention to them. I was just too exhausted trying to take care of this little girl. And eventually they started kind of making their own little story, their own little cartoon that would play out in my brain. And one day, probably when Claire was napping, I sat down, keyed in the story, a very rough draft of the story, and forgot about it. Years later, we moved from Montreal. We were living in Montreal when Claire was born. We moved to KW. That's where our son was born, Taryn. And when we got here, I remembered the story and I was like, oh, I don't know where that disc is. And I don't recall actually knowing where the script was either. And it would probably take another big movie year later when we bought our first house before I found the manuscript. And I was like, oh, thank God, there you are. But I wasn't really that worried because the story was so ingrained in my brain. It had been there for about 2 or 3 years that I knew that I wouldn't forget the story. So basically what I had was a rough manuscript for the story. So I don't know if it's inspiration. I was finding my list, being a first-time mom, my husband and I doing our best to raise this little girl. And these little characters appeared. And I just let them be. I just let them rumble around.
And when did you bring him to life? I know this is a process, it's a journey for you. When did Marvyn come to life?
Marvyn was in and out of my life for over 2 decades, about 24 years. The manuscript, I would put it away and forget where I put it. And I was busy. I was busy being a mom. I was a stay-at-home mom. Eventually went back to school when my son was about 8 years old. And it would just pop up from time to time. I would get reminders. And I remembered being a teacher and being in a meeting with some other members of a group we call the ELL Learners Group. And we were always trying to find books for children who came from other countries, from diverse backgrounds. And there was a level of frustration. And the level of frustration was that we couldn't always find books to engage these children where they could see themselves. Around Black History Month, there were books that we could find, historical books. We also wanted to find books, just everyday books with just stories, just playing out the way life was playing out at school. The school that I taught at Sand Hills Public School was a very diverse school. And we just wanted regular stories for the kids. And we wanted them to be able to pick up a book and see themselves on the front cover and see themselves in the pages of the book, just living life and doing what kids do. And I remember sitting in that meeting and the teacher saying, it's really frustrating that we just cannot find books to represent the diversity that's representative in our school, in our community. And I sat there and I thought, well, I have a manuscript. If only I knew where it was. And I didn't at the time. Maybe 2 more years would pass. And the manuscript popped up. It was before Christmas. We were getting ready for a trip to Trinidad to visit relatives. And I thought, okay, I've got to put it away. I've got to put it somewhere where I'm going to find it when we get back from this trip. Mm-hmm. My problem is that because the characters have been with me for so long, the first 5, I call them the Fab 5 in the first book, that I knew exactly what they look like. And I didn't have an illustrator that could create them the way they were in my mind. And then one day, the illustrator's father, who's a friend of ours, came to our house and dropped off the family Christmas card that his daughter had created, Chouette. And I looked at the Christmas card and I was like, wow, this is great. And I started looking at the card thinking, I've got to find out who created this card for them. Is it Vista Prince? Who could it possibly be? And then I saw Chouette's name at the bottom. I was like, wow, here's my illustrator. And the weird thing about this is that these characters were created years before she was born. But she was the one, and I knew she was the one. So we came back from our trip. And of course, I forgot where I put the manuscript again. But I kept her card out because I knew when I found the manuscript again, that it was time for us to do this. So COVID came up, started, getting worse and worse. It was March. I was cleaning up my closet and the manuscript literally fell out and hit me on the foot. And I laughed. I laughed because I knew that it was time, after all these years of being hidden in drawers and closets and going through several moves, that it was time for the story to come to light. So I called up Chouette and I said, you know what? I have written a children's book that obviously I have to update because it's now over 2 decades old. And I'd like for you to be the illustrator. And I honestly don't think she knew what she was getting into because she was juggling university courses and said, sure. I'm sure if she knew what she was getting into, she probably would have hung up on me. And we just started that process, me being a new author and her being an illustrator. And basically this came about because I am what I would call an MS survivor. I have multiple sclerosis. I've had the disease for 27 or 28 years. It ended my first career as a registered nurse. And when I returned to Teachers College, I was in a better physical state. I had the relapsing, remitting form of the disease, which means that the symptoms come and they go. I never have a normal day. I'm never 100%, but some days are better than others. And I felt at that point in my life, I was stable enough to commit to being a teacher. And I loved being a teacher. And the summer before this had happened, I had a really difficult summer. I was having a lot of cognitive issues, memory issues. I was getting lost on walks and, driving and getting lost in the car, getting disoriented, not knowing where I was, not recognizing who were familiar to me. If I ran into students I remembered, but if I ran into parents, at the mall or what have you, and they said hi to me, I didn't always know who I was talking to. So I knew that there was a problem. My physician advised me to take a break, and me being very stubborn, I said, no, I can go back. It's like I'm used to writing out this disease and I'm going to go back. So it was the MS that brought me to the point in my life where I was now out of the classroom and probably had time now to focus on these characters when they reappeared. So when it was time to put them out there and share them, I now had the time to do it.
Okay. And you did mention to me in our chats before that writing the book has helped you in your own journey and in your own, dealing with your own illness and helping you with your illness and getting over parts of it. Mm. How exactly did your writing do that for you?
Well, I was floundering quite a bit because I really thought that I could make it through the school year. I set some milestones for myself. I thought as I said, I didn't listen to my doctor's advice. I said to her, let me go back because I at least want to have 1 month with my new students to get certain assessments done. So even if I have to step away for a little while, at least we have that connection. And when I do come back, I know the kids, they know me. I have an idea of what they're capable of, etc., and what the year would look like. So when I finally stepped away after giving myself several milestones, I thought if I can make it to the end of September, when I got the reading and writing assessments done, then I'll reevaluate if I can continue. And I thought I was doing okay. My teaching partner will tell you I was not, but I thought I was doing okay. And I said, okay, Thanksgiving, I'm going to make it to Thanksgiving. I made it to Thanksgiving. Okay, now I'm going to set a new milestone. I'm going to make it to Remembrance Day. Made it to Remembrance Day. I wasn't doing very well, but I made it. And I thought, well, Christmas. I'm going to make it to Christmas now. But in early December, the wheels literally fell off the bus. And my teaching partner, Madame Tang, who's also a really good friend of mine, she had to have a really serious talk with me. And she had to say, this is what I'm seeing and this is not you. And I finally had to come to the realization that I did have to step away. And I really only intended on stepping away for a little while. And it was heartbreaking because at this point, I'm really attached to my students. Every year, teachers get attached to their students. They're like your kids who are your kids at school. So my MS journey is that I had lost my nursing career which I also enjoyed. I was a neurology nurse, so it's ironic that I ended up with a neurological disorder. And now I was teaching with no intentions of retiring anytime soon. Madame Tang and I always said we would retire together. We would walk that last walk together. And here I was not doing well and struggling. Not just, I was used to the physical symptoms, but now I had new symptoms that involved tremors and the inability to control my hands and my feet and dizzy spells and falling down. And my family had to come up with ways to try to keep me safe. I was very unsafe. We found a system called SOS, and basically it's a little device that I wear, put in my pocket. If I fall down and no one's at home, it gauges that I've lost balance and it calls my husband, calls my family. And then if I don't answer the phone, then they know that I'm in trouble and they call 911. So we had to make all of these changes. So I've always kind of looked at my MS as a life changer. It's caused me to change courses many, many times, but it's also frustrating because when I was first diagnosed, I heard a lot of cants from the neurologists, the two doctors in Seattle who are wonderful. And they said, well, you know, you've got this disease. And they basically gave me a list of all the things I probably wouldn't be able to do with my life. You can't do this, you can't do that.
Of course.
You might not be able to have children because you may not be able to take care of them properly. You probably won't be able to return to school to re-educate. So there were a lot of can'ts. And when I was at the point again where the disease was now even more challenging, I was really fearful of what my future would look like, not just professionally, but personally. Like how was I going to get through this? And I went through some very, very difficult, dark moments, struggling with what the rest of my life looked like. You know, my husband and I had plans. Our kids were, my son was halfway through university. Our daughter had graduated, looking towards, you know, maybe 10 years retiring and traveling and doing that sort of thing. And here I was not even able to function within my own home and keep myself safe, let alone return to the classroom, look after 23 cute little people who relied on me for not just teaching them, but for their safety. So the journey with MS has been a love-hate journey. It's caused me to take better care of myself, but it's also forced me to change what I thought was my path in life. So it's ongoing. You know, just as I say to my students that learning is a lifelong process, what I go through with this disease is also a lifelong process. But it's brought me here. It brought me to the point where I had time to focus on the books and to create these and to bring these characters to life. And even though I can't be in the classroom with my kids, I can be with them through these books. And so that is a consolation to me.
Thank you. Now we're talking about Messi Marvyn. He has, is it 9 friends? It's 10 of them all in all.
10 of them all together.
All together.
Yeah.
What is your main message in the book? What would you want readers to get out of the book, of the children that are reading these books? What do you want them to learn from it and, you know, gain and understand? And how can they apply it to their lives?
Well, I've always admired my students. I was the teacher in the classroom, and I was supposed to be teaching them, but they taught me a lot. I have 2 wonderful children, and I watched them grow up, and I watched them form friendships as I watched my students form friendships. Some of them positive, some of them not always positive. And I watched how they made friends, and they really went into friendships with a attitude of acceptance. Unlike adults, we come up with, some adults, I shouldn't say we, all of us, come up with walls and barriers that we put up, and we find excuses as to why we can't be friends with certain people. Sometimes those reasons are, they look different. They're from a different culture. They're not from my religion. Gender. But kids don't really, for the most part, they don't have that. They're very sociable beings. They have really big open hearts. And I'm not saying that their friendships are smooth. They absolutely are not. But they're fixable. In the classroom, usually it's about who took whose marker and who wouldn't play with whom at recess. But it's so easy to bring them back together. And in a short space of time, You can get children being friends. They want to be friends. They want to work in groups. And I really admired that about my own children, like the open-heartedness. And I really, really wished that adults, as they grew older, would remember those childlike ways when they formed friendships easily. And I want grown-ups to come out of their boxes. You know, you have your group of friends. I've got a group of friends from high school that I still have a very diverse group of friends. And maybe that's one of the reasons why Messy Marvyn and Friends are such a diverse group, because we really did look like the United Nations. It was about 9 of us that hung out together. But I was able to open myself up and make new friendships. And I find that some adults really put themselves in a box and they're not willing to get to know new people, whether it's in the workplace or a new neighbor or, you know, perhaps a parent at a school, because they've decided we're just too different. So I don't want kids to forget that childlike way that they had, that open-heartedness, that non-judgmental attitude they had when it came to making friends and opening themselves up. So when they read these books, what I'm hoping is that when they get out of elementary school and they go to middle school and high school and university, that they really open themselves up to new friendships. And I want them to understand the difference between a positive friendship and a positive relationship and a negative relationship. In these books, these little friends accept each other just the way they are.
That's the way they are.
They have very diverse, they're diverse, first of all. Any child can pick up this book and see themselves in this book. And there's a connection that they can make right away. And when they open up the book, they will see that the friends are different. They have very different personalities, but they respect each other. They like each other. They care about each other. And they have a lot of fun along the way. So that's basically my message, but also the self-acceptance. These characters don't make any excuses for who they are. They don't change themselves to fit into the group. Chatty Patty doesn't try to be Hungry Hannah. Messy Marvyn doesn't try to stop being messy to be like his friend Picky Paul. They love themselves the way they are. And I think that's also an important message for kids. Yes, you're going to grow and you're going to evolve, but you have to also love who you are and accept who you are.
That's very important for kids growing up. You're right. Especially now that we live in a very diverse world, diverse communities and societies. And it's ever evolving and changing. And the classrooms are very diverse. And the children do have to learn that acceptance. Parents,
Absolutely.
I think, need to really enforce it and make them aware that, okay, you have to learn to accept everyone, accept who you are, first of all. You rightly said who you are. And that way they can accept others. So
Absolutely.
very important message in there. Now, of all the characters in the story and the stories in your book, which one do you think you relate to most and why?
Well, if you ask anyone that knows me, I am Picky Paul. And that's probably from being a nurse and having to be exact. Like, you cannot have wiggle room when it comes to patient care. You can't be 85% accurate in patient care. And then I became a teacher, and you can't really just wing it when you're a teacher. It's like, yes, there's a certain amount of flexibility, but you really have to plan ahead. You have short-term goals, you have midterm and long-term goals. And so I am definitely Picky Paul. I am Cherry Cleary, who's named after my daughter, because for the most part, I'm a pretty chipper person. I'd rather be happy than sad. I'd rather smile than frown. I'm definitely Chatty Patty. If you get me chatting, if you get me talking, it's hard to get me to shut up. So, so definitely I am her, and I am Hungry Hannah. I love the character of Hannah simply because as girls get older, boys get older, we do have issues with body identity, and kids look at, and teenagers and tweens look at magazine covers of Photoshopped celebrities, wanting to look like them and not wanting to eat. And sadly enough, I'd seen this as a teacher. My kids were good eaters, grade ones, but whenever I had nutritional duty or nutrition break duty with older kids, sometimes you'd see lunches being composted and not eaten or saved till later. And you realize it's because there's a body image, a body type that they're trying to attain. And they think all of a sudden that eating is a bad thing. And Hungry Hannah loves her sweet snacks, and she loves her healthy snacks. And the nice thing about her is that not only is she always snacking, but she usually has a snack for her friends. So she likes to share. So I do love my snacks, especially during COVID time. It's like there's certain foods that are always in our grocery order, cake, chocolate being one of them. And the character that I'm not is Messy Marvyn. He's the one that came to me first. I'm very organized, and I think I'm organized. I love it drives my family crazy because I love baskets and boxes and organizing things and labeling things. And I'm happiest when I'm doing that. And Messy Marvyn is messy, but to me, he is adorable. Like I really do love his character.
Him. Yeah.
He's very likable, but he's not me. And so I guess that's just my imagination stepping outside of itself, stepping outside of who I am, because he is the first one that stepped forward and popped into my imagination.
I love this part here where he's in the library. I think they were going to do painting. They were painting.
Yeah.
And I love this funny part when it said, when Messy Marvyn finally reached the orange paint, his stool started to tip over. Patty jumped out of the way quickly. The red, orange, and blue paint splashed everywhere. So yes, there's a picture of him here. If I can see the there. Oops. There. Paint everywhere. I mean, I laughed when I got to that point because from the beginning of the book, you see Messy Marvyn starting off being messy and just getting worse throughout the day as he encountered different adventures.
Yeah.
And by the time he got home, I mean, he was completely dirty. But you know what? His parents accepted him as he was.
Exactly. Right from the get-go.
From the get-go. And that was that's what I liked most about it. The parents were accepting and his friends were accepting and he was accepting of who he was. And he didn't care how dirty he was. Yeah.
He did not. He did not care at all. As teachers, we do something recount. When a student reads a book, we ask them to retell or recount the story. And you can retell Marvyn's day, his adventurous spring day, basically by the stains on his clothes. So at the end of the story, when he gets home and his parents are looking at him lovingly, because this is very expected. It's a wet spring day outside. And his mother says, "What is on your face, your hands, your clothes?" And he tells her. And every time he says, well, they're crumbs, maple syrup, mud, water, peanut butter and jelly. Basically, it's the story that we're recounting. So he's retelling his day through stains.
Yes, he is. All right. I have a question coming up here from someone, a friend of mine. Her name is Pauline. And she's asking, is this going to be a series? So I know you have a lot to tell us about this. So let's answer Pauline's question.
Sure. Thank you. That's an excellent question. When I started out, it was not a series. It was one book. It was Messy Marvyn. And when Chouette and I were done and we uploaded the files to the publishing company, I'm like, great, done, finished. A little while later, all of a sudden, Chatty Patty stepped forward in my imagination. I started going through the same process as I did with Marvyn over 20 years ago. And all of a sudden I'm realizing, wait a minute, she has a story. So one evening I sit down. The story had been kind of going through my brain for a few days. And I disappeared into the story, and basically over 3.5 hours, I got the plot line done, which was a rough version of Chatty Patty. And then I started working on Chatty Patty. When I was finally done several weeks later with the Chatty Patty story, well, all of a sudden in my brain, my imagination, Hannah steps forward. I'm like, seriously? Like, how many stories are in there? So again, I spent several weeks working on the Hannah story. Well, here comes Picky Paul. He's got something to say too. He's got a story. I'm done with Picky Paul. Here comes Cheery Cleary. So at this point, I've got 5 characters over several weeks. And at this point, I'm moving into the summer and I have these stories and I'm still tweaking them. I'm still editing. I'm still going through them. I'm still, making changes, but I'm juggling several stories. And I'm trying to make the stories connect so that if you are a series reader, when you read about something happening in one story, it actually connects to another story. So when I was writing Chatty Patty, I was talking with Chouette, the illustrator, and I said, okay, they're going on a school trip, and it's not reasonable just to have a school bus with 5 kids. We need filler characters. We need other kids, classroom kids on the school bus. So we had a little break because Chouette is a university student and she needed a few days to work on assignments. And as a teacher, of course, and a mother, I'm like, absolutely take all the time you need. And very strongly, these other 5 characters came forward, and they came forward in my imagination with great force. They came with, most of them with names, and their personalities were set. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how many characters are in my brain that have to tell their stories? So I wrote the Chatty Patty story, and I gave them their personality names, their character names. And after I got through the Chatty Patty story, moved on to Hannah, moved on to Vicky, Paul, and Sherry Clary. I'm like, well, I've got to start writing for these other characters as well. So it involved a little bit of backtracking because, as I said, if you're going to follow a series, then you're going to see certain connections. Certain events will link to other events in the story. So Messy Marvyn came out. Messy Marvyn's Rainy Day Fun launched middle of December on Amazon.ca.com, Barnes & Noble, if you have friends and family in the States, Chapters Indigo. And Chatty Patty, a Kindle version, just came out a couple of days ago. The paperback, I'm hoping, will be available on the same sites either by tomorrow or early next week. So there's Chatty Patty.
Oh, that's
right.
Okay.
Right now, Chouette and I are working on the illustrations for the 3rd book, which is an anti-bullying book. And it is the toughest book that I've written simply because it is bullying, which is something that we address every year at school in terms of safety and wanting students to feel safe and happy and secure at school. It's part of the curriculum, our health unit. So while I try to keep my stories light and cheerful and happy, you really cannot make bullying a light, happy story. So I really struggled with this book because I said to Chouette the other day, when we're working on the illustrations, some of the illustrations are kind of difficult because we're literally showing bullying. We're showing bullying in all of its forms, the physical bullying, the name calling, the exclusion, the lies that are sometimes being told about the victim. And you have to see, I won't give a spoiler alert, but the character that goes through this has to learn how to cope with the bullying. This character has to find his or her voice to speak up. And the other characters, the friends and the new characters, which I will let you know, the setting is in summer camp, so there are new friends around them. All of the characters have to learn to speak up and find their voices to stand up to the bullying. So it's not an easy book. It's not a joyful book. We take almost every opportunity we can to put a smile on these characters' faces because there are so many illustrations that, where all of the characters are sad, even if they're not the victim, they feel sorry for their friend. So all of the characters will eventually get a book. I am working on book 9 right now, and just before we went live, I said to you, I'm having a little bit of writer's block. So hopefully the writer's block will go away. Maybe it's just because I'm just juggling a lot of things right now. And my focus is on book 3, but the intention is to have a 10-book series with all of the characters. And you can see them. I don't know how well you can see them here, but when you get to the Chatty Patty book, you will see all of the characters. Messy Marvyn, it's the first 5, but by the time you get to Chatty Patty, those are
the others come out. Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Those are the ones
I think
you also saw in the cartoon.
I love it because I think, as I said, I had my daughter look at the book as well, and she wants to use it in the school. And you have a lot of people asking about books that reflect children of diverse cultures. Okay, different skin colors, different ethnicities, different, because you don't have that in the classroom that they can relate to. So having it with them, and what I like about the book as well, you've made it into a teaching book.
Yeah.
By adding the questions and discussions at the back of it, making the school connections and the follow-up questions and activities where, is there a character in the book that looks like you?
Yes.
What do you like about yourself? Is there a problem or adventure or journey for the main character? And you have them learning as well, while they're reading. It's a learning journey for them. And it allows them to think and become critical thinkers and to, really analyze what the story is about. So it's not just reading a story, but it's also learning about the characters, relating them to you as they go on. So I like that aspect of it as well. And I do hope that the teachers use it in the schools.
Well, last week I did a reading for a couple of readings, and the teacher actually used one of the activities where the characters create their own personality characters for themselves. And she is just going through the process now, getting permission for the parents to allow us to use the artwork that the kids create. Of course, we won't be showing their actual names, first names and last names, but allowing us to put that on our website to share. I already had my own niece duplicating the Messy Marvin characters. And it's a good activity. I think I couldn't help myself as a teacher putting in learning activities. As a teacher, I appreciated when other authors had questions, follow-up questions at the end of the book to guide me as a teacher so that I could, create my lesson plans and, just take samples of what the author suggested that maybe we should focus on, develop my own ideas. So this isn't a you must follow this from all the questions through you, the parents, teachers, kids. You can pick and choose what you want to focus on in terms of your own learning, because reading isn't just about reading. It's also about understanding and learning what the message is in the story. You don't close a book, walk away from a book and go, done, and next, and move on to the next book. You have to have some sort of reflection time. And these questions are geared towards getting the children to think about what story they read, who they read about, and what the message is. And will everyone come away with the same message? Not necessarily. But if I can get the readers to stop and think for a little while, then I think that's a good thing. As a teacher, that makes me feel good.
Yes, it does. And I really enjoyed it. Looking forward to the rest of the series. When it comes out, you will let me know when Chatty Patty's ready. When she's on, I guess, Amazon. And I think I bought this one through Amazon. So the rest will be available through Amazon, Indigo, etc. I will post the link on the page so everyone can see the link, go to the link. If you have kids, especially if you're a teacher out there, they can, get the book. And what I wanted to share, just to close off a little bit, I want to thank you again, Cheryl, for joining me tonight and sharing Messy Marvin and his friends with us, sharing your journey with us with MS and how Messy Marvin, and the writing journey has helped you a little bit in your own struggles. One of the takeaways I have from this and I want to share is that we have barriers. Each of us would have a barrier in our lives at some point. I mean, it could be anything. It could be an illness. It could be a job loss. It could be whatever. But we have to find ways to manage it, to cope with it, to deal with it, to jump through get over those barriers and still be able to succeed, still be able to do things. Because I look at you didn't let MS stand in your way. Yes, it does impact your life, but it has not stopped you from changing your journey and writing and bringing Marvin to life. So now you are a children's book author. And it didn't stop you. You didn't let it stop you. So I'm proud of you for that. And thank you for sharing your journey with us when it comes to that.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
You are most welcome. Okay, so I will share everything on the page, the links. The video will be available for anyone to look at after. It's going to be on the page, and I'm going to post it on YouTube as well. Okay.
Can I just add one quick thing?
Uh-huh.
The illustrator Chouette is just amazing. And on our Instagram site, we've also posted some time lapse, the development of the pages of illustrations, and we've set it to music just so that children can see the process of seeing a character. Like last week, we showed the class that I read to the Hungry Hannah page where she's under the umbrella, how she starts off as just simply a circle with a line in her face, and then basically the use of shapes to create her body. And when it was being played, I could hear the children in the back going, ooh, ah, and even the teacher said, oh, and here comes the rain. So there's so much to this book that I want to share, because I'm hoping that maybe it will inspire kids to write, but I know that it's also inspired kids to draw and illustrate. So I do appreciate the time that you've shared with me, and I hope to see you soon.
I hope so too. I have one more question for you.
Sure.
Someone sent a question in here. What advice do you have for anyone who wants to start writing?
Wow, that's an excellent question. I say start writing. Whatever is in your brain, whatever is in your imagination, whatever your joy is, just simply start writing about it. Just start with jot notes. That's what I do with my students. You write down ideas. You get outlines. You think of all the elements that you need. If you're a fiction writer, you need characters, you need setting, you need a problem, a journey, which is basically the plot line. You need a resolution. You need to have a message. Even if you want to write nonfiction, if there is something that interests you, then you will choose that subject, whatever that subject is, to teach other people. I know that the author that you interviewed last week said that she tried her hand at fictional writing, and it was
wasn't for her.
It wasn't for her, and she prefers fictional writing. But basically, you write what you're interested in. She is a life coach, and that's the way she wanted to reach out to her readers, and is successful at it. So you just simply start, and you just have to know that whatever your thoughts are, whatever characters you've come up with, whatever storyline, whatever message you want to get out there, whatever learning you want to share, that it's valuable, that we need to share our thoughts, and just know that that there is a place for you. There is a place for your thoughts are. If they are positive thoughts, if they are helpful thoughts, if they're thoughts to teach and engage and to enlighten, then absolutely there's a place for you. So I'm hoping that, we continue to make progress, and we see more and more authors, different backgrounds, just sharing their stories. I really look forward to it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so thank you. So I hope that answered your question, Pauline, as to what advice you need to start writing. Very good advice, Cheryl. For me, I just write as well. Whatever comes to my mind, I just write and it flows, right? I edit after, but I just write,
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of tonight, and I look forward. I have someone else coming on next week. She is also Trinidadian. Her name is Denicia Francis. She's also a children's author, and she's going to be on next week. But she actually lives on the island, so that's a little bit different. Yeah.
Well,
I'm just meeting lots of people. Great, thank you.
Tuning in.
Okay, good night, everyone, and tune in again. Thank you for tuning in with us, and see you next week.